I would like to introduce myself. My name is Teresa Rowe. I'm with the Office of Institutional Equity and Compliance at CU Boulder, the OIEC. And I have also here who we're co-presenting together today is Jessica. Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Jessica Ladwiebert and I'm the Director of the Office of Victim Assistance here at CU Boulder, which is the Confidential Counseling and Advocacy Trauma Center, and excited to be co-presenting with Teresa today.
Thanks, Jessica. So we are two separate offices. My focus in the Office of Institutional Equity and Compliance is prevention, education, and assessment for our campus community. So I do a lot of training with students, staff, and faculty on all of the issues that our office addresses. So today we're focusing on the issue of how our campus addresses the issue of sexual misconduct, sexual assault, the range of things in our policy. But our office also handles complaints. So if something happens on our campus or off our campus impacting our student population, our office does any kind of adjudication reporting process for the university. Many of the issues that we address, particularly sexual assault, there are often overlaps. There are crimes also in Colorado and most all states in the US. And so the university process is separate from a criminal process. So we're going to talk through a little bit about some of what we do here on campus. Jessica will talk about her office, but we're also going to be talking about some of the content that we really educate our students about as well, so that you all can be having these conversations, you all can be supporting students around these topics and ensuring that you have the information you need to navigate some of these issues. So we want to make sure that people, I don't know how much time you all have been spending on Zoom. We've been spending way too much time on Zoom, but people can use the chat to ask questions. And while I'm talking, Jessica can do some monitoring of the chat. I will also pause and give people an opportunity to ask specific questions. We really want this to be a session where if there are things on your mind and you have questions or concerns, we really want to be able to answer those for you. So please don't hesitate to throw something in the chat to catch our attention, and we'll pause and address that. You can also use the raise hand function under that participant tab. So if you would like to unmute and check in and ask a question, raise your hand and we can see that in your profile, and then make sure that we pause and call on you. So Jessica will interrupt me if I'm missing something and she needs to draw my attention to someone's hand raised. So we don't want to leave you waiting around to the end to ask questions, but we will also have a good amount of time for just general Q&A. So the university has a range of policies, both student conduct general policies about how they engage in the classroom, all of the rules for their conduct as students on our campus. Our office is a separate office, Institutional Equity and Compliance, where we're really addressing some of the core issues that really are part of people's civil rights protections as a student. So our university policy is system-wide, so all of our CU campuses have these sets of policies, and each campus has their own equity office that would deal with, adjudicate, handle any kind of complaints under these policies. So these are the three policies that are carved out specific to our office. And so any kind of protected class discrimination and harassment, we have 16 categories of protected class that come from federal, state, as well as university regent law. And those are aspects of people's identities, characteristics, social identities that are protected under the law, in making sure that people are not discriminated against or harassed based on any aspect of identity. So that includes things like race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, disability, religion, all of the protected classes that we would be typical for our educational environment or the workplace. We also address issues of sexual misconduct, which includes intimate partner violence and stalking as well. And then we also have a policy on conflict of interest in cases of amorous relationships. And that policy is different than a nepotism policy. what it indicates is that people who have any kind of evaluative authority, so a faculty member who's grading someone, even a graduate student who's grading or TAing in a class, they cannot have any kind of oversight with someone they're involved with in a consensual romantic relationship with. So that evaluative authority needs to be addressed and taken away. So these are the 3 core policies that our office addresses. I just want to remind people that policies apply both on and off campus. So it's important for our students and for everyone to understand that there are often issues that happen in the social environment that bleed back into someone's educational, living, classroom, their experience at the university. So our policies apply quite broadly. They also apply across the board to students, staff, and faculty. And our processes look quite similar for everyone who's part of our community. So we have protections for things that happen on our campus, but we also know that sometimes folks outside, or something might happen to a student who's on break and traveling back home or on vacation, those kinds of things. If that is, any of these issues are impacting our population, that our offices are a resource to them regardless of where it happened. Really, these policies are in place to ensure that people have access to an education. And if there are things that even happened in the past that are affecting their ability to focus, to learn, to go to college, those are the kinds of things we need to be addressing and correcting for them. That might not mean that we're going to hold anybody accountable because someone who harmed an individual isn't part of our campus at all. But the support and the resources and the protections are in place for our community. So that's really important to know, that we can be a resource, even if people think, well, this didn't really happen on campus, it happened when they were traveling for spring break or something like that. So it's really critical to understand that our support and our resources are really comprehensive. Excellent, thank you for checking in, Jessica. We'll throw some other links in the chat as we talk a little bit more as well. I want to touch base, today we're really focused on the issue of sexual assault. This is a serious issue in our society. It's a problem that we see across the board throughout the US and in all college campuses. And so it's an issue that we really want to be as transparent and open and provide all the kinds of resources and information and support as possible for our population, which includes you all as well in terms of supporting your students. So this slide is some data from our 2015 sexual misconduct survey. So every 4 years, we do a comprehensive study of our undergraduate and graduate population, really assessing for things that are happening in our community. And so in 2015 is when we did this survey. We were supposed to do this survey last fall. That got delayed because of another survey through the regents. And then this fall, it didn't make sense for us to collect this data, kind of given this COVID environment. So we will be conducting this survey again next year. So our 4-year window is a little bit longer right now because of some other unexpected circumstances. But this data is still very relevant. We know that these issues have been a problem for college students and on college campuses for a long, long time. And so even though this data is a little bit older, it's super relevant to our community, and we know that these problems persist. So this is just data sort of giving people an idea of what the prevalence of sexual assault. And this was a self-reported study. All of our undergraduate students received the survey, and we had probably one of the best response rates we've ever seen for a survey. We had a 42% overall response rate. For our first year students, we had over 50% response rate, and for our graduate students, we had over 50% response rate. We also surveyed staff and faculty around issues of protected class and sexual assault as well. So you can see that, similar to other universities throughout the United States, particularly similar to a public state university of our size, these numbers are unfortunately pretty predictable. and super problematic. So we know that we have a big chunk of our population that is experiencing sexual assault, even if they didn't report it. They are really indicating that things have happened to them that they would consider to be sexual assault. That's true for women, it's true for men. Those numbers are significantly different, obviously, but it's also true for our LGBTQ identified students, and those numbers are a little bit higher. So we want people to understand the breadth of this issue and recognize that people need to be talking about this regardless of student sexual orientation, regardless of their gender identity. These are issues that impact everyone. And so we really want people to understand that this is a critical issue to be educating students about. I'm going to pause there and make sure if there are any questions, if people have a chance to jump in. I don't want to dwell on the data, but I also want to answer questions if people have them. Andre, you want to jump in?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. You probably will get into this a little bit further down, I'm sure, but if you don't, the term sexual assault is very broad.
Right.
I assume it rolls in pretty much anything from a slight pat on the butt to something much worse. Can you break this down more? Because 27% is just mind-boggling.
It is pretty mind-boggling. So yes, we can break this down a little bit, and unfortunately, it doesn't get that much better. So we do define sexual assault as any unwanted sexual behavior, non-consensual, unwanted, against someone's will. And in the survey, we both looked at what were the range of behaviors and then what was the tactic that made it non-consensual. If we filter out looking at people who only experienced some kind of significant unwanted physical contact or penetration, intercourse, the number of women drops down to about 21%. So the vast majority of what people are indicating are things that are more significant, right? In terms of sexual behavior that was not just a pat on the butt at a party. Oftentimes our students don't necessarily code that as sexual assault. So that when we look at the behaviors, most of the behaviors were quite serious. About 40% people indicated that it occurred when they were incapacitated. So there was a significant presence of alcohol or other drugs where they really felt like they couldn't be consenting. Another 40% indicated that there was force, and that's what made it non-consensual. And then, and people could choose multiple tactics as well. And then a good chunk were that really people had not mutually decided what was okay. There was not affirmative consent. And so the numbers don't improve dramatically when we kind of narrow it down for just physical contact that was unwanted. The behaviors were more serious and sexual in nature. But that's a great question because it's complex to sort of look at the range of behaviors and all of the things that people are indicating have happened to them.
So that means my 17-year-old daughter, as a freshman, has a 1 in 4 to 5 chance to being raped on campus?
Yeah, and those are the numbers that unfortunately we see across the nation. 1 in 3, 1 in 4, and so our rate is right on par with the national average. And we'll talk a little bit about on this next slide. It's important to also know that first-year students are at higher risk. And so our first year students, as well as our returning second-year students in their first semester. So when our survey, we surveyed everyone, the entire population. So people could indicate when a sexual assault happened. And so for the vast majority of people, even if they're answering it as a senior, indicated that 67% indicated that it happened in their first year of being at CU. And so the vast majority of these issues do impact our first year student population. Like I said, that 20% second year, and then we do have some, much more limited risk, but some risk. And there are also students who have multiple assaults. And so we see that in our older students where they have been assaulted multiple times as well. And then the vast majority also indicate that it occurs in their in the fall semester. We know that that risk is really significant in terms of as our university and our community is coming together, particularly for students, that drive to meet other people, to connect and have fun and make friends is really their primary motivator as they arrive on campus. And while that is a critical transition, it's an important time for them to really be settling in on campus, it also is quite a high risk time. And so we know as a university, we're preparing them with information the summer before they're arriving here. We're educating our students about these issues. We talk to them about the range of issues around consent. They have required courses that they have to do. But we know that a lot of students are not getting this comprehensively in high school. And that transition into college, that first semester, is quite a high risk and complex time for them. So it's also important to know that the vast majority of people, even though 38% here, it's saying someone I didn't know before the assault, students still indicated that that was another student that they had just met. So our true stranger numbers are quite low. So the vast majority of what we are dealing with is sexual encounters between students that maybe some portion of it was consensual, but ultimately consent was not established in a way where everyone came away with the same perspective, and people are having experiences that they don't want or that they do decide would be considered sexual assault. We know that people taking the survey, even if prior they had not sort of clearly defined something that happened to them as sexual assault, reading the definitions in the survey can be quite significant for them, and people can have that moment where they say, wow, this really was sexual assault. It does meet the definition of what the university is talking about. So oftentimes when we're surveying, Jessica's office sees more increase in outreach from students to process an experience that was unwanted. So I know these are heavy issues, and these are real challenges and real risks. And unfortunately, with all the prevention work that we do on campus, we know that late high school and early college are the really big windows for sexual assault to occur. The vast majority in the United States, over 70% of all sexual assaults occur in that age range, late high school to early college, 17 to 20. And so this is a high risk time for students. And one of our big challenges is that as a country and as a state or as a society in general, we do lack comprehensive sexual health education for students, which is something that is an indicator of reducing sexual assault at the college level. So we try to close that gap as students arrive on our campus and work with them to ensure that they have access to information, build some skills around, clarifying their values, their boundaries, what they want and don't want in terms of relationships or sexual experiences, but having more development of that prior to transitioning to college is really critical. And so we know that we can't just solve this problem like starting in college. It needs to be a bigger lift. So being able to have these conversations, talk openly about these issues, really be transparent about both the positives of really being grounded in our own values and making decisions that feel good for us, and the risks of sex when someone is not respecting our boundaries or is not listening to our, what we want, all of those things, and sex refusal skills. All of that comprehensive education is really critical for our students. Yeah.
I believe you're going to get to this, but we do have a question where someone is wanting to know more specifically exactly what education the freshmen have had so far this semester regarding sexual assault. That was a question that came in.
Yeah, so I will address that as well. So thanks, Jessica, for pointing that out. We do, all of the incoming students, and then this year, all of our returning students as well, have a course that they're required to do that addresses all of these issues, and they have that course assigned to them early in August. All of our incoming students had that in mid-July. So they get information through that course that is an interactive online course where they're really looking at a range of scenarios, thinking about the issues around consent, thinking about what non-consensual behavior might look like, the risk factors, data around the prevalence. So we provide a lot of that information in that course. We also do some skill building is quite hard to do virtually. And so one of the things that we really struggle with as a university and kind of the college population in general is more opportunities for skill building. People need multiple exposure to these issues. They need, you know, multiple opportunities to revisit some of these concepts and practice some of these skills in general. And so we don't have as much education as we would like as an institution, because once students arrive on our campus, that becomes something that they can seek out, but it's not required. But in terms of what they get that is required, that's specifically online. We also talk to them about ways to look out for friends, which is a critical approach because students will take that information in. If I'm oriented to thinking about what might happen to my friend or what my friend might need, I take that information in a little bit better for myself as well. So we help students orient to, you know, it's important that you look out for your friends. Here's what you would look for if you were concerned that, you know, consent maybe isn't possible or someone is being predatory at a party, those kinds of things. So we drive a lot of that education through scenarios and skills that students need to navigate some of the complex social environments that they're in. So that's the one piece that's required. The rest is self-selected. And so, you know, we really want to encourage students to get sexual health education, particularly if they didn't have really comprehensive sexual health education growing up. We also know that there's a significant overlap around alcohol. So we want students to have harm reduction strategies around drinking and attending parties. Even students who don't drink attend parties, attend social events where there is other people are drinking and there is alcohol. And so having some awareness and skill to navigate those environments is really critical. As I said, students often are very motivated to meet people, make friends, attend you know, parties, social events. They're really looking to connect with other students, and it lowers that sense of risk that this other student could be someone who could, you know, violate my boundaries, or my friend I'm at a party with is someone who's a problem. And so really helping students recognize some of those contexts and concerns is part of our education.
I just want to jump in and say that there are also multiple different messaging. So via either big boards in the dining center, or I just read an article that was pushed out to all the students today about drinking and alcohol. So there's also different types of messages and articles pushed out to the students throughout the whole semester to reinforce the message and the education that they do over the summer, early fall.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. And if you'd be willing, Jessica, to put that article in the chat, then everyone can have that article. We do campaigns in the residence halls, particularly around bystander skills and consent. Those are sort of our key issues that we focus on for our first year incoming students. I also want to just sort of revisit for all of you really quickly some concepts around consent. This is included in our education for students in lots of different ways. You'll see it in the article that Jessica will throw in the chat. But most of our laws in the US, and as well as our university policy, really have an affirmative consent component. That consent is about mutually agreeing, a meeting of the minds, and understanding that what is happening is wanted, is okay, throughout any kind of sexual encounter. And so while students can say what consent is intellectually, they can say yes, someone needs to say yes, it needs to be mutual, it can't be coerced or forced. The complexities of some of the messaging, the media, all of the things that people get in our society around some of these issues can get super convoluted for people. So they need opportunities to talk about what gets in the way of advocating for ourselves, asking for what we want, sharing our own boundaries, making sure that someone else is respecting those, respecting other people's boundaries. They need much more of that kind of education. So that's a lot of what we do and we offer in person because people need to process through that. We do a lot of additional education for our Greek community as well as our athletes. Those are intact populations that get a little bit more education. Some students get additional education through their first year experience course. There are lots of courses that we're in talking about these issues, but again, it's not necessarily everyone. So we miss that opportunity once they get here. It gets a little bit more self-selective. And so the more support and the more reinforcement of these issues we can have, the better. We also talk with students about incapacitation, which is a state where someone is not able to give consent. So alcohol and drugs in and of themselves do not render someone incapacitated. So people can have been drinking or have had consumed some level of alcohol or other drugs and not be incapacitated. But if someone has been drinking to the point where they're disoriented, they're, don't know what's going on, what's happening around them, and they're stumbling, those kinds of things, those are signs of incapacitation. It's not just someone who's asleep or passed out. And so we do a lot of education around some of those concepts. And it's critical to understand that where the law is and where our university policies are around incapacitation, regardless of what someone is saying or doing. If they're incapacitated, they are legally not able to give consent. So I just have a couple quick slides too on some of the things we teach students to notice. We do a lot of bystander education. That is also a part of the online course training, as well as how to support friends if something happens to them. So again, those friend skills, thinking about what I would do for someone else, is a great way for students to take in this difficult information. It feels less close to home, and it allows them to say, oh, this is important information for me because I need to look out for my fellow buffs or my friends around me. And that orientation is a really good way for students to listen to this information. And so we talk to them about kind of warning signs, things that they might recognize or notice where someone is pushing someone's boundaries or limits, or focused on someone who's had too much to drink. Those are all warning signs that consent might not be possible, or someone may be looking to take advantage of someone who's in a vulnerable state. And so it's critical for students to be thinking about how to look out for friends. We will also share with you our website that we have. We have skills on buddy system skills. It's another skill set that's really important. When going out with friends, here are some things that you can do to reduce risk, have a good time together, and make sure everyone gets home safely. And so we have a lot of buddy system skills. We also do a campaign about that and various articles. And then a website where all of this information lives as well. And we do a campaign to push that out. And we can also send a summary. Someone is asking a question about, will we get a PDF available from this? The recording will be shared, and we'll also send out some resources and additional information. But for a great resource is this website, colorado.edu/don't-ignore-it, no hyphen, just don't ignore it, all one word. This website has all of the information about where to report, where to get support on campus, confidential resources. I'll throw the link to this site in the chat as well. And then Jessica's on it. And then here is, just a screenshot of some of the skills that we have on that site, information that really reinforces some of these skills that we teach our students. So that's a great place to get language, looking for opportunities to ask students if they've seen, concerning behaviors, have conversations about their own values, and just give them a chance to work through some of the positive and negatives of campus life and what they've seen and how they've navigated it. Giving them opportunity and space to explore some of these issues is really critical. So I'm going to pause there and turn it over to Jessica. She did throw the Don't Ignore It link in the chat. That's a great resource to have on hand. And so I'll let her jump in, and then if there are other questions as well, this might be a good time to just take a quick pause too.
Yeah, I thought I'd pause to see if there were other questions so far. So hi everyone, as I said earlier, for those who joined late, I'm Jessica and I'm with a separate office. I'm with the Office of Victim Assistance, also referred to as OVA. And we are one of the confidential resource centers. And I'm gonna jump in because when we looked at the survey that Teresa was referencing earlier, we found out that 39% of our students told no one after some form of sexual assault or partner abuse while they were at CU. So if 39% are telling no one, that's why we want to really increase our education on these topics and what ways are supportive. Because of the people who did tell someone, they told their friends first. By far, I've seen this data duplicated in national surveys across the country, that if they're going to tell their friends first, we really want friends, we want family members to be responding in a supportive way, because that will lead to them seeking out more support. I am going to pause for this question before we go to the next slide. Has the incidence of sexual assault decreased with COVID restrictions?
Do you want to check in on that? I'm also writing something in the chat, Jessica, but I can follow up if you want to jump in.
Well, I don't have the raw data, so I am going to lean towards you, but I can tell you that we are still seeing sexual assault happen. I don't have everyone come to my office who has had these types of experiences. Sometimes they have their private therapist, or sometimes they choose not to come to us. So I don't have the data to say if it's the same numbers as pre-COVID, but I will tell you it is definitely still happening during COVID, and we are still helping people who have had these experiences. I want to say that while we maybe have seen some declines in intimate partner abuse, we also know that COVID has made it ripe to isolate people more. So some people might be having these experiences, but sharing less because of fearing using some of the resources, or worried about, I just worked with someone worried about impacting a friend group, since the friend group is already your small cohort, and not wanting to impact those. So I do think the pandemic is leading to some people maybe feeling like they can't share what has happened to them. Okay. So by far at CU Boulder, I will say, having worked in the victim assistance field for over 15 years, when I saw this data, I was really surprised. I've worked with thousands of survivors, and I often heard them say that they felt partially responsible, or they didn't want to get anyone in trouble. And so that was the reasons they were not reporting to official offices. But we found that in 2015, the #1 reason they weren't telling anyone, a friend, let alone an official office, was they didn't think that the sexual assault or the abusive partner's behavior was serious enough to tell anyone. And so I know that to Teresa and I, that made us want to continue to increase education on what is sexual assault, what is intimate partner abuse, what is stalking, because we wanted people to take it seriously and know that these events, you have options, you have rights, and it is serious. We know that media plays into this. We know that family, friends play into this as well. So we also want to change how survivors are talked to and responded to when they do choose to tell someone. So I do want to re-highlight that one of the free places that people who have experienced a variety of different traumatic events, this includes but is not limited to sexual assault, intimate partner abuse, stalking, harassment, discrimination, bias, physical assault, other types of unwanted contact, harassment as well. So students, staff, and faculty can see a professional advocate counselor where we can provide counseling. And counseling is a space to process the impact of what's happened, learn coping skills, heal and grow. Advocacy is unlimited, and it's a place to learn about options. We're here so people can make informed decisions. People don't always know that they have medical, criminal, academic, administrative, and civil options. And so we want people to be informed of their rights and options and then support them on whatever they choose to do as next. That can be going to meetings with them, helping them report. That can be just giving them a space to process what's happened. So that is really, we're all about survivor empowerment. We have our phone number that we answer during business hours. We also have counselors available nights and weekends, and a lot more information on our website. Do people have other questions about services? I also think I saw someone come off mute, so I'm going to just pause to see if someone verbally wants to ask a question.
Well, since nobody else is talking, I'll have another comment. And I think, I don't know, maybe people are just shocked and nobody wants to say anything because, again, I'm still trying to wrap my head around these stats. And you said 39% of people don't even report this. That means that 27% that you mentioned in the beginning of this meeting might easily creep up to 40 or whatnot. And that, of course, is even more depressing.
Well, the data is a self-reported data set. And so we know that, you know, a lot fewer people actually report to a counseling office, you know, seek support or report to our office. So we see a smaller slice of that 27%. So I do think, you know, that 30% it does creep up, particularly around, you know, students who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual. And so we know that that is also a risk factor and is a vulnerability for students. But, you know, that generally is the ceiling for these issues, thank goodness, right? We see a smaller portion actually talking to people, seeking support, or reporting. Our office, the estimate is that about 8% from the survey of what students say they experience, about 8% said they reported it to our office or to law enforcement. A higher percentage, about 12%, you know, sought support from Office of Victim Assistance or other type of counseling. So we know that people aren't seeking as much support and resources as we would like them to be.
Yeah, but it does show logically that the 27% could be higher than that. So I appreciate you offering all these after the fact services, but it is obvious that more has to be done to prevent this.
Yes.
And I think that's what I want to highlight. Teresa already talked about this. We are doing, you know, some things in college to talk about consent, to do education on setting boundaries, respecting people's boundaries, understanding what incapacitation is, and that you should not take advantage of someone who's incapacitated. But I think there's a lot of pressure on colleges to fix this issue. That is an issue that has been going on way before college. So I think you're right, it is a bigger issue, and this is also where I want parents and families who still have younger children, or we're talking about this with our 4 to 5-year-olds about, you know, body autonomy. We're talking with our elementary and middle school about healthy relationships and consent at early ages. We're talking about if we get rejected, how do we handle that rejection in a healthy way? Because it's not only understanding consent, it's if you don't get consent, handling it in a way that is not angry or violent or ignoring someone's cues. So I do think this is going to take our community to see a change, and starting with our children much younger. And then I think Teresa answered this, that our community equity course is part of orientation. It's a mandatory requirement for our students. They get a much more in-depth version than what you're getting today. So I'm also going to put an article in the chat because these are some tips on supportive responses. I think these are things that family members can do. These are things that friends can do, because we know that if you get a supportive response afterwards, they're going to be more likely to tell another friend, tell a parent, even potentially even report. So I just like to share some tips today that we can all use. Is we always want to check on someone's safety first. It's the one time where I probably would say they have less choice, because if you're worried that they can't keep themselves safe, or worried they're going to harm someone else, we want to be checking on mental and physical safety first. But once we feel okay on that, we want to be listening and not interrupting to someone as they decide to share about their experience. And then this is really hard for parents. I feel like I talk to more and more parents and families every year of people who've had traumatic experiences, is letting these students choose what's best for them. I saw the comment that this is the first time they might be alone, and that's true, they're becoming adults. And how can we give them options? Like, you could do this. How would that feel? What would feel most helpful to you right now? Because after abusive partners, sexual assault, they've had power and control taken away from them. We want to really help empower them and give them that back. We might have judgments in the moment. I'm a parent, Teresa's a parent. We might have thoughts about what our children have done, and sometimes we might want to share those. But if they're talking about a traumatic event, such as sexual assault, we want to really stay focused on their feelings and their options right now, and avoid judging decisions that they've made or feelings that they're having, and get our own support as we manage that. And we also really want to validate whatever feeling they're having. I just talked to a mom, they were really numb, they were shut down, they didn't want to talk about it. That's normal. Some people could be anxious or angry or withdraw. So validating and normalizing their response to an abnormal event is very important. And then we've been putting resources in the chat. You can review things on the new student and family programs website, but helping them find resources, helping them find a confidential place to process and or learn more about their choices is what we're here for. Should we pause? I haven't been able to keep up with the chat. Are you on that, Teresa?
You know, I'm trying, but I know people have questions, and there might be other questions as well.
Pause for a moment. Oh, how long have you been requiring people to take the equity course? It's been quite a while.
It's been, well, we had a change. So I was just typing in the chat as well. In typical years, students have both an online and an in-person required course. And so this year, everything was online because everything was online. And so in typical years, we do both. We've been doing the in-person education for about 15 years. But we had a shift in our policy course to that shifted to an online format 5 years ago when we changed in-person orientation. So about 5 years ago, the university kind of pared down what was happening in person for students as they arrived, and did some additional work in an online format, Canvas, similar to what they do in their classes. So there was a split between online and in-person. But before that, we always did in-person education as well. So now we have both online and in-person.
What is good about the online course is that it's a quiz is required. So it's scenario based. So people who maybe even, you know, some of you might be worried, did they just click through the slides and not really read it? They actually have to pass the quiz and prove that they've passed it to be able to check that off their box. So I think that has helped. And with the bottom part of that question of has it decreased sexual assault, we were supposed to do this survey where we were going to compare our 2015 data, but that has unfortunately been pushed. So we're hoping to do a survey where we can compare data from 2015 to 2021.
Yeah, and it's important for people to also understand that there's not this, you know, the survey is really important because there's not this direct correlation of if things are getting reported, that means more is happening, because there's such significant underreporting. So in the last 4 years, we've seen a quadrupling of reporting. And so while we don't necessarily believe that these problems are getting better, that they're not happening necessarily in our society, we are seeing people recognize behaviors as a problem and report more often. So we're also interested in whether, you know, have we gone from an 8% reporting rate up to a 15%, which would be, you know, it doesn't sound like a lot of progress, but knowing that these kinds of issues and the culture around this is very difficult to change, that would be a good indicator. More people are seeking support resources, more people are reporting. We're certainly hopeful that less is happening, but we know that more reporting needs to happen before we start to see, and more comprehensive education needs to happen before we start to see that true reduction in actual incidents.
And then I saw the question about hiking. I first want to say, to go back to early stats, that sexual assault is happening by someone they know. It's either someone they really know, like a friend, or it's someone they met earlier that night, like a friend of a friend's brother or something like that. So I think it's important to note that it's usually someone that they know. It's less the strangers, less the bushes, less hiking alone. I have other thoughts about hiking alone, which is why I put that article that we recently published to the students about tips on hiking. So again, we of course have occasional stranger sexual assault. That is not what we see the majority of in Boulder, but there are probably some other safety tips when it comes to hiking.
And it's always, you know, safety tips are always challenging. You know, we all know what it's like to have a teenager who's just like, I'm invincible, nothing will happen to me. And so, you know, just kind of, you know, having a conversation about these issues in a way that helps them sort of explore, you know, maybe concerns that they have. You know, they don't respond well to lecturing, so we don't approach, you know, lecturing them about these kinds of issues, but we help them sort of see potential areas where they might not have had, you know, awareness that they need to be cautious or have concern. And again, talking about, you know, what are you seeing with friends? What, you know, what would you be concerned about with a friend? How would you kind of look out for each other? Those conversations can also help them have some insights for themselves. So that's just one of those challenges that we have, that particularly difficult or information about danger, our young people avoid. So we often have to package it in a way that is much more approachable for them.
And I also want to acknowledge, like, we've done this presentation for a handful of years for Family Weekend, and we always have parents who are very shocked by these numbers. So that's not an abnormal feeling to have for some of you. So I also know that CU, though, isn't ignoring these numbers, right? I think we even changed the title of this presentation to be like, it's happening on all campuses, including ours. So we acknowledge it, we talk about it, and we don't try and shy away from it. Because I think that's an important thing when schools will actually talk about it and address it, because it's happening on all schools. And so we have put, you know, an investigative office, an educational office, a counseling and resource advocacy office. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that too for any parents that are having those thoughts, and parents who have told me those thoughts they've had before when we've presented.
Jessica, we have a question about, can we show the numbers again? And so I can do that and go back. I'll try to not make people dizzy, because the movement of the presentation can be a little bit challenging. So I'll go kind of slow so I don't give anybody vertigo or anything. Okay, so here's the first slide that looks at overall rates, and particularly broken down by students who identify as straight or heterosexual, but then also breaking out by folks who identify as LGBTQ. We collapse both gender identity and sexual orientation. We have less power in those numbers because we don't have as many students who identify as LGBTQIA. And so when we combine all of those categories, it gives us that better sense of what's happening overall. And you can see that the increase for men is really significant. And then you also see the increase for people who identify as women as well. So it's complex data to understand. I just also want to put on, I'll put a quick note that on our website, we have all of this data. And so we have this broken down in lots of different ways, very comprehensive information about this data. So if people are interested in exploring it more, I'll put the link to that in the chat as well. And then here's the data that's really breaking down in terms of the relationship. You know, again, that 38% is not a true stranger number. When we dig deeper, people indicated it was another student and it was someone that they had just met. And so they code that differently than an acquaintance, right? Someone they previously knew. And so we have significant percentages indicating that it was you know, a dating partner, a friend of a friend, acquaintance, coworker, things like that. The research is quite significant in this area. You know, we know a lot about particularly the social environments, party environments. One of the big risk factors that we see, which you know, is a concern for this environment in COVID, is that students often get separated in social events. And a good majority of students indicate that the person who assaulted them was the person who helped them get home safely from the party. So we talk about that with students in terms of, you know, don't leave your friends behind. Bystander skills, you know, you need to differentiate if someone is actually really trying to be helpful or if someone's trying to isolate someone so they can take advantage of them. So if someone offers to walk your friend home so you can stay at the party, you know, if you don't really know that person and trust that person, that could be a very high risk situation. So that's an indication that, you know, you should walk with them. Don't leave them alone with someone they just met. And so again, we frame that as looking out for friends versus, you know, I wouldn't do that. That would never happen to me. There's a lot of distancing that happens for students around these topics.
And Teresa, what was the data? There was a question on the most common place this happens, and I don't want to mix up my national data that I'm more familiar with. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, the vast majority of our assaults happen off campus in a residence. So a tiny proportion happens actually on our campus in the residence halls. It's about 11%, and over 73% indicate that it happened at an off-campus party or off-campus residence. There is another chunk off campus somewhere in Boulder. And so again, that sort of those social events, house parties, fraternity parties, being at other people's residence, and you know, gathering and drinking, those are our highest risk environments. And I will throw in the chat a link to the data at the end. I can't quite do both until I stop sharing my screen. And I'm just going to jump ahead to other slides. Are there other questions that people have? I really appreciate folks attending. You know, oftentimes the other sessions are huge and then, you know, 10 people come to our session because it's a very difficult topic. And, you know, everything that's happening in our society, you know, we know around issues around racial justice as well as the Me Too movement, that our students are more oriented to concerns about these issues, but often don't have a lot of good education or don't have a lot of resources, information of how to address these problems or help solve these problems in college. And so oftentimes they're quite eager to have these conversations and they just need opportunity and space to learn more and feel safe to explore this. And that's true for us as parents and guardians, you know, family members as well. We're happy to answer any other questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can also, hi. so that I can also pop the full data set, the link to that in the chat. All right, put that in the chat so people have access to that as well. Are there any other questions? Are there any even reactions like, help me? You know, we're happy to entertain anything that might be useful to you all.
I'm trying to figure out how to best approach our son because, you know, it's virtual now. I'm more comfortable speaking to him in person, but I live in another state. And he also has a roommate in there, which also sometimes limits what he wants to talk about. I always ask him, are you by yourself? You know, not that we talk about sensitive topics, but I don't want to talk about tests, results, and all that when he has someone else in there. But he gets very embarrassed about talking about this. So I'm trying to figure out, would it be best if dad does it? Or, you know, how would I best approach him on topics like that? And I know it's individual, you know, parent versus child interaction, but do you have any tips on that?
Yeah. Well, you know, sometimes just even using the fact that you went to this session, you know, you could say, hey, I went for Parent Weekend, I went to this session where they talked all about the issues of sexual assault, and I guess you had an online course that you had to do. Do you remember doing that? Well, you know, what have you seen on campus? And just start to open up that door to say, gosh, I was really surprised by some of this information. What are your thoughts? You know, and just use that. Sometimes, you know, sending them articles or resources to read, people will utilize, you know, the internet, things that they can do and continue to learn on their own without feeling too vulnerable or embarrassed about seeking out the information. So that's always a great way to do it. You could send him the article link that we sent. You know, just use those everyday opportunities to you know, be curious and hear more about what he's thinking as well. Does that help?
Thank you. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Sure.
I also noticed Kelly's comment about high school, and we saw it. We've seen it in our high schools. I mean, it is. There's movies about it. I'm trying to think of the name of that movie right now, but there are movies, and it is happening in high schools, and that's why I think it's really important we're starting these conversations much earlier, because I think people are shocked hearing now with your students in college how much it's happening, but it's happening at very similar rates in high schools. And so starting these conversations much earlier. We've seen much more activism in our high schools, I would say, in the last few years. We had a local high school doing a lot of activism, getting the school district to increase the training with their counselors, with their faculty, which they're called teachers. So yeah, we're seeing a lot more activism with our youth and our high school age students.
In Colorado, it is required by law that comprehensive education include things like consent, sexual decision-making, be inclusive of all gender identities and sexual orientations. So we do have some state law parameters if sexual health education is offered. So we know that's super inconsistent throughout the country. But you know, high school students are eager for it. And they really do get frustrated about how limited their sexual health education is. So that's something that we really advocate for, you know, at the college level as well, working with K through 12.
And we really want the education to be about understanding consent, healthy relationships, about not perpetrating the act of sexual assault. And that should really be what I'm hoping the focus is that. Well, we know it's 2:01 and there's other sessions happening. I'm sure Teresa and I can stay on the screen for a few more minutes if people want to chat with us. But we understand as you start to log off. And thank you so much for engaging us today.
Yeah, we really appreciate the time and interest for sure.